All right, everyone, it was just announced that the Supreme Court nominee that Trump has chosen, it's not actually Amy Barrett, it's going to be Brett Kavanaugh. Probably number 2 in being more acceptable than the rest. Like Hardiman, it's like, and then Kethledge is like, not so much. And then there were a couple of others that, I guess didn't make it to the true shortlist. I'm not even surprised because initially they said that the shortlist was 3 justices. 3 individuals for that position. Then they started throwing Hardiman in, and I'm not exactly sure what happened, so I guess people were misled and it was actually 4 or something. I don't know. I don't understand. This puts Orrin Hatch in an odd position because remember, the other day he was referring to the potential person for that slot in the female tense. He was like, oh, whoever she is going to have to blah, 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 and people are like, oh, I guess Amy Barrett's the one chosen. And maybe it was a fluke. Maybe Trump said, hey, refer to them as female so people will think it's Amy Barrett. And they'll be focused on Roe v. Wade because she's like religious. Kavanaugh is actually not opposed to Roe v. Wade. Here's what I think Trump did. I think he did that to fool people. Get the left riled up about abortion so that their main position of attack would be, hey, Trump's going to appoint someone who's going to take away women's rights, be terrible, and then no abortion allowed anymore. And then he puts Kavanaugh in there, and by all means, a moderate justice, maybe scantily more right-leaning than Anthony Kennedy would be, but basically an acceptable replacement. All things considered, could definitely do a lot worse. I still think Amy Barrett would have been a more interesting choice. I think that if Ginsburg kicks off, it would be interesting to see her end up with that slot. I think probably the rationale was she didn't have as long a career as Kavanaugh. But there is one interesting thing. There's one other thing people need to keep in mind, which is that Kavanaugh worked with Ken Starr. He was one of the people working with him on the Clinton cases. He was one of the people investigating the suicide, in quotations, of Vince Foster. You remember that Clinton associate who shot himself in the back of the head several times? Yeah, that was Kavanaugh investigating it, and it was all very fishy and very odd. So at the time, of course, I don't even think he was a full-on lawyer. Like, the dude's only, 53 years old? He's not very old. He was probably still in law school at the time, and he was helping with this investigation. So the Clintons have to be shaking right now, because this may be a symbol. This may have been at the same time that it was a ruse to get the left worried about Roe v. Wade, while then putting in someone there that's like, no, he's basically just a strict constructionist, not like guns and stuff, which is probably what we need in the Supreme Court. Again, Amy Barrett would have been great. I think still would have been a better choice, but Kavanaugh is perfectly acceptable. The other part might be to put pressure on the Clintons, basically back the fuck off, because now Kavanaugh's on the court and he's going to be there for the next, unless you Scalia him, I guess Trump would be saying to them. But it's interesting. I think that as of right now, I think that Trump may still actually be live while I'm speaking here. But just a quick update for anyone who prefers the standalone as opposed to, watching a live stream at, sore red eyes hour of 9:15. I know not everyone can be up at this time and watching YouTube. Yeah, in the morning you'll see this, except YouTube's new algorithms are going to demote non-authoritative news sources pretty soon. I'll be covering that tomorrow. So the SCOTUS pick is Kavanaugh. I'm glad it wasn't Hardiman or Kethledge. I'm glad it wasn't the others that were considered literally the only other person on that list that would have been a good choice as opposed to, acceptable. All 6 were acceptable. Although I don't think Hardiman was initially even on the list of 6, if I remember correctly. It was a really weird anomaly there, and I'm not sure, again, what happened. Amy Barrett was the one I would have picked, but Kavanaugh, close number 2. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the battle that will now play out for it. What's going to end up happening is the left, they're going to be blindsided. They're certainly going to look into it and say, well, he worked with, Bush, although they can't really attack that because they've started to love the Bushes. They'll probably have to focus on the Vince Foster stuff. They'll probably have to focus on the Ken Starr investigation to attack him. Because otherwise he's not going to be distinguishable really from an Anthony Kennedy. In fact, might be more tilted towards a woman's right to choose. Well, that's been the only thing they've talked about for the last week. Since Anthony Kennedy announced his retirement, they were like, oh my God, the Supreme Court is going to enslave all the females in the United States. Well, Kavanaugh clearly isn't going to do that. It's going to be very easy for him on that line of questioning. Be interesting to see how it plays out. That's about all. Peace out.